Love it or hate it, the Chiefs are on the verge of completing a historic season, just 2 games away from being one of the less than 10 teams to lose 1 or fewer games in a season. And with a game added now, they have a chance to match the regular season win totals of some of the most dominant teams in the history of football. But what does it really mean to be nearly perfect on the season? And it really begs the question that, is it fair to say that it's a disappointment if the Chiefs don't win the Super Bowl if they manage to win 15 or more games? Well, in today's video, we're going to look at other one-loss teams from the archives of football and figure out how high the bar is for the next team to join this club. And in today's video, we're going to answer the question of what happened to every 15-1 team in NFL history. Now, in 1984, the San Francisco 49ers became the first team to win 15 games since the league expanded to a 16-game schedule in 1978. They were well positioned for a good season after a 10-6 1983 campaign when they went to the conference championship, dropping to Washington. In 84, though, under the leadership of legendary head coach Bill Walsh and the Hall of Fame quarterback Joe Montana, they started absolutely scorching hot, winning their first 6 games of the season. In this stretch, they beat the Washington team that ended their previous season, but mostly beat mediocre and pretty bad teams as well. The perfect season bid was ended by a Steelers team that won the AFC Central and went to the AFC Championship game. And I mean, even after that loss, they did handle the rest of their schedule with pretty relative ease. But then again, their only opponent that had a winning record during that span of games left for the rest of the year was the 10-6 Rams. Joe Montana was a Pro Bowler with a 3,600-yard passing season, while Wendell Tyler led a power run game with over 1,200 yards. They scored the second most points in the league and fielded the league's best scoring defense. In the playoffs, though, their simple schedule didn't seem to be the problem as they rolled over the Giants and shut out the Bears before outscoring the Dolphins by 22 in Super Bowl 19. They went on to hoist their second Lombardi in just 3 years on the back of a nearly perfect season where they absolutely rolled over everyone. Now, 1 year later, though, we have our next team after losing in the 1984 NFC Championship game to those near-perfect 49ers were the Bears that had a lot of expectations. In their 4th year under Mike Ditka and led by Walter Payton, the Bears absolutely trucked through everyone in their path in 1985. And unlike the 84 Niners that we just went over, the 85 Bears absolutely dominated powerhouse after powerhouse on their schedule. I mean, they beat teams like the 10-6 Washington teams and Dallas teams, and the 11-5 Patriots and Jets all fell to the Bears. I mean, hell, they even won a revenge game against the Niners that season. And after making it through their first 12 weeks completely untouched, the spoiler for Chicago was a 12-4 Miami Dolphins team captained by Marino and Shula. Like the Niners in the previous year, the Bears had the best scoring defense in the league, also allowing the fewest yards while also scoring the second most points. The punky Jim McMahon wasn't asked to do much under center, throwing for just under 2,400 yards in his 13 games, but that's largely because the offensive load was carried by Walter Payton, who rushed for 1,500 yards and had 11 total touchdowns, coming up just short of the 1985 MVP and earning first-team All-Pro honors. As we all know, though, the defense was the largest factor for this team, though, led by Richard Dent, who led the league in sacks, and William Perry, the Fridge, among about a half a dozen other superstars on this team. Like, I mean, it's safe to say that this defense single-handedly delivered this championship to the Windy City. They shut out the Giants and Rams and allowing just 10 points to the Patriots in the Super Bowl, while the offense dropped 46 points. The Bears were about as dominant as a team that could be without winning every single game, but you have to wonder what would have happened if Miami had made it to the end instead of the Patriots. Now, jumping ahead a decade, we actually go from one of the most famous defenses we've ever seen to one of the most famous offenses going 15-1, as it was the 1998 Vikings were the next team to have a near perfect season. They did so by averaging 35 points per game, winning games by an average of 3 scores. They won their first 7 in a row, nearly dropping games to the weaker Bears and Rams before they actually did slip, losing on a walk-off touchdown by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I mean, honestly, the rest of their schedule was anything but soft, with the only losing teams remaining being the newly established Baltimore Ravens and the 3-13 Bengals. Every other team in the Vikings' path was 500 or better, yet they still finished with the league's best offense, scoring the most points in a season in NFL history at the time, in the 6th best scoring defense. Quarterback Randall Cunningham was named a first-team All-Pro and came in 2nd place for MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, and Comeback Player of the Year. Rookie receiver Randy Moss was the absolute star of the show, also an All-Pro first-teamer with MVP votes thanks to his 1,300 yards, 17 touchdown season. I mean, even in the decade that we did skip, the playoffs had finally expanded and added a first round bye, which the Vikings did earn with their 15-1 record, but there were no signs of rust when they stomped the Arizona Cardinals 41-21. The magical season did come to an end, however, as the 14-2 Atlanta Falcons came to Minneapolis and overcame a 20-7 deficit to topple the Vikings. The Falcons would lose in the Super Bowl to John Elway and the Broncos, who were yet another 14-win team. And on the topic of the 98 Vikings, they were the first 15-1 team to not make the Super Bowl, and the season ended in such heartbreaking fashion that the team is considered one of the best to never hoist the Lombardi. Now, less than a decade later though, we would get a little bit of a run of just some good 15-1 teams. The first of these was the 04 Steelers, who were the only team on the list to accomplish the feat with a rookie quarterback. Franchise legend Ben Roethlisberger had been selected out of Miami of Ohio and handed the franchise's reins. And honestly, because of Ben Roethlisberger's just inexperience as a rookie, the offense did start pretty slow that year too, which is why they ranked so much lower just really compared to any of the other offenses that we're gonna mention in this video today. That's also another key reason of kind of why they took their first loss in the season so early in week 2. I mean, after escaping with a 3-point win over the Raiders, the Steelers did take a 3-score loss to the Baltimore Ravens in just the second week. At this point though, Dick LeBeau's defense absolutely took over for the rest of the year. This defense allowed the fewest points and yards in the entire league. This defense and improving performances from Roethlisberger opened the doors to wins over the 14-2 Patriots and the 13-3 Eagles, as well as a revenge win over the Ravens in week 16. The Steelers were the 1 seed in the AFC after finishing 3rd the year before. Big Ben had earned his nickname by the end of the season, winning Offensive Rookie of the Year, but the lion's share of the offensive credit belonged to the two-headed rushing duo of Jerome Bettis and Deuce Staley, as well as receivers Hines Ward. On the defensive side, Troy Polamalu and Joey Porter anchored a dominant secondary, while linebacker James Farrar had a career year leading the front seven. The Steelers had an overtime showdown for Roethlisberger's postseason debut, escaping the Jets, but their defense couldn't hold back the Patriots, who scored 41 against them in the AFC Championship game. It was the most points anyone had hung over the Patriots defense all year, and the Patriots would go on to win their 3rd Super Bowl in 4 years, but the Steelers rebounded, winning the Super Bowl in the next season. Oddly enough, the Steelers were arguably even more dominant in the following season despite a worse record, but their 15-1 season laid the foundation for their years of contention in the AFC. And now, of course, we have to mention the one team in the 2000s that I think if you're a football fan, all wish wasn't so damn good in the 2000s. And now, yes, if you don't know who I'm talking about the New England Patriots, who may have not had a 15-1 season, but they went the extra mile, going undefeated in the 2007 regular season. The Patriots played spoiler to the league's last 15+ win team, but this time they didn't show any traces of weakness. And now, yes, I know they did face one of the softest schedules by the numbers and only faced 5 teams that scored 3 or more touchdowns against them, but that being said, you can't deny that they took care of business against everyone in their path. Go-ahead scorers and last-second defensive stands held off potential losses against the Ravens, Eagles, and Giants, but the Patriots became the first team to post an undefeated regular season record since the 1972 Dolphins. Tom Brady was at the peak of his powers at this point, winning his first MVP, his first Offensive Player of the Year, and his first-team All-Pro nod. He did this with a 4,800-yard, 50-touchdown season in which he only threw 8 interceptions. Supported by Wes Welker and the newly acquired Randy Moss, this Patriots offense was the best in the league in both scoring and yards. In their first playoff game after the first round bye, this offense dropped 31 on the 11-5 Jaguars to advance. I mean, honestly, as good as this offense was too, their defense was just as dominant. They allowed the 4th fewest points and yards, led by Mike Vrabel and Asante Samuel Sr. This defense was the difference against the Phillip Rivers and LaDainian Tomlinson Chargers, holding them to 12 points in order to stamp their ticket to the Super Bowl. As we all know though from the legends and just the insane catch, the Patriots finally met their match in Super Bowl 42 against Eli Manning and the New York Giants. As we all know, the game was back and forth the entire time, with no team scoring twice in a row, but the Giants managed to pin down the Pats offense, holding them to just 14 points. That being said though, the Giants still needed a game-winning drive, punctuated with a Plaxico Burress touchdown to end the closest thing the NFL has ever seen to a perfect season in 50 years.
Manning lobs it, Burress alone, touchdown New York!
The Patriots did disappoint in the biggest moment, and considering the way they went for the next 7 years without winning another ring, the single loss of their 07 season certainly sent ripples through that building. Now, moving on to a team that personally for me, I really don't think ever matched their nearly perfect season ever again after they achieved it. is the 2011 Green Bay Packers. After winning the Super Bowl in the 2010 season, the Cheeseheads kept rolling on the back of the NFL's best offense, which did its best to disguise a defense that allowed the most yards in the league that season. After grabbing the league's attention with his Super Bowl MVP performance, Aaron Rodgers took home his first regular season MVP in 2011, throwing for 4,600 yards and 45 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions. His 122.5 passer rating was the best in a single season in the history of the NFL, and since he needed to play near perfect football for the Packers and their poor defense to win, his MVP was basically clinched when they started the season 13-0. Green Bay did have one off game in week 15 where they just scored 14 points against the Kansas City Chiefs, who won despite only scoring a single touchdown. The offense did come back to life though in the final 2 games, scoring 80 points between them, but with a schedule compromise mostly of losing teams, they weren't prepared for a playoff match against the Giants team that had played them tough in the regular season. After taking their first round playoff bye, the Packers played their entire divisional round game from behind against New York, who outscored them by 17 points. Rodgers ended the game by throwing a game-sealing interception after the 2-minute warning. The glaring weakness of their defense was just too much to overcome once the stakes were at their highest in the playoffs. And now one of the most controversial 15-1 teams because, well, if the Packers had a really easy schedule, then the Carolina Panthers were basically living in the clouds with the schedule that they played. So soft. Charmin ultra soft, man. With a strength of schedule of -3.88, they were almost expected to go nearly undefeated. The Panthers posted a similar win streak to the 2004 Steelers, but allowed their only loss at the end of the season instead of near the beginning. Carolina only scored fewer than 27 points twice in their first 14 games and only scored less than 20 once in the entire regular season. After winning their first 14 in a row against the weak NFC, a divisional matchup got the better of them as they fell to an 8-8 Atlanta Falcons team in week 16. They bounced back with a 28-point win over the Buccaneers, and the loss right before the season's end was a welcome wake-up call. Cam Newton cleaned up the award scene, winning MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, and being named first-team All-Pro after he had just had under 4,500 total yards and 45 total touchdowns. I mean, the dude's rushing ability at the time in 2015 was just absolutely unheard of. Like, he deserved all of those awards. And not only that too, I mean, he did captain one of the best offenses in the league that year, but I think one side that doesn't get as much recognition is just how good this defense was too. Like, they finished 6th in scoring and yards, and the pairing and overall success landed head coach Ron Rivera Coach of the Year honors. Carolina continued to roll after their first round bye, edging out the Seahawks in the divisional round and routing the Cardinals 49-15 in the championship game. However, the seemingly unstoppable force met an actually immovable object in the Super Bowl, running full speed into the 2015 Denver Broncos, determined to deliver Peyton Manning another Super Bowl ring. The team's soft schedule had seen them crush NFC teams like the Cowboys and Bucks, who couldn't keep up, but the Broncos had been battle-tested by the Steelers and Patriots on their journey to the Super Bowl. And don't get me wrong, because the 2015 Panthers were so fun to watch, but a lot of their dominance came from just really empty calories throughout their season. Now, fast forward to this year, and it's been 9 years since the last 15-1 or better team, the longest gap since 1985 to 1998. The Kansas City Chiefs will almost certainly finish the season with 15 wins, as they did beat the Steelers, and 16 is more than possible with games against the Steelers beat to get to 16 wins. But without the benefit of hindsight, it is going to be interesting to compare the raw numbers of these Chiefs to the others on this list. Like, I mean, if the season were to end today, Kansas City would have one of the 2 worst offenses we've looked at in this video, alongside rookie Big Ben in the 04 Steelers. While their defense is solid, 3rd in the league in points and yards allowed, they aren't first like the Pittsburgh team and don't look nearly as dominant. The other thing to consider too is that the Chiefs would be just one of just 3 teams on this list that played against a negative strength of schedule, mostly beating losing and 500 teams. This could change based on how some of their opponents close the season, but no matter what, KC has faced one of the weakest schedules compared to its peers. In comparison, the other 2 teams to play such weak schedules, the 07 Pats and the 2015 Panthers, fell just short of winning a ring, but did manage to win their conference championships. And I mean, if we're gonna go based on historical precedent, a 15-1 or better team hasn't hoisted the Lombardi since the '85 Bears. It seems to me like winning so much can paint a target on a team's back while they let their foot off the gas whether they like it or not. And now, yes, there are a few ways that this season could end based on other teams that we have looked at, like the Steelers, with their offense being so underwhelming that it could keep them from reaching the Super Bowl. Or even like the Panthers in their soft schedule could come back to bite them in the ass in the Super Bowl against a battle-tested team like this year's Eagles or Lions. Or maybe, just maybe, they can channel the 85 Bears and on the back of their great defense scrap their way to their third Super Bowl in a row. And if you want to see exactly what players think about CJ Stroud, then click this video right here.